back from injury. It's a long journey and a lot of work gets put in. How nice was it to be back in center field yesterday?
Yeah, it was a great experience. It didn't really hit me until I was out there how long it's actually been. So, yeah, it was great being back out there, and I'm just thankful for the medical staff and my PT back home and everybody that helped me get out back on the field quickly. But yeah, it was a great experience. Actually felt like a real baseball game to me because I'm not typically a designated hitter, so being back out on the grass was awesome.
Woody said that he's not concerned about you getting reps necessarily in the outfield. He just wants you to get out there. Do you feel like there's any adjustment just getting back in the swing of things, or did it feel like riding a bike yesterday?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment, but I feel really confident in my abilities in the outfield. I've still been able to get my reps in practice, and I've been shagging, doing power shags and everything, trying to make that transition as seamless as possible. But, it's good to get back out in the game and, start thinking about the game situations and get everything running back through your head again to, when I'm actually playing in real games to, hopefully be at my best.
We've seen some power this spring. I don't know if you're planning on just every hit is going to be a home run. That'd be pretty cool. But what have you been working on offensively?
Yeah, so I think, I've been weightlifting a lot when I wasn't able to do baseball activity. So my strength is definitely there right now. And, swing-wise, just working on bat path and staying through the ball and, square contact. So I think that's going to transition and help with the power.
We got, Donnie Ecker, who's the offensive coordinator, Tim Hires, Seth Connor, a totally new offensive hitting staff. What are some of the things you've picked up with your conversations with them so far?
Yeah, what's been cool is, the game planning has been awesome, just kind of simplifying things and having a clear approach when we go into the game. So that's something that's been different, and I think it's going to be really helpful for me personally. So that's something that really stands out.
Are there any concerns the beard will not be aerodynamic?
I haven't really thought about it until then, but maybe if it gets too big, but I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Awesome, thanks, Eli.
Yeah.
Nathaniel, thoughts on camp so far?
It's exciting. Short camp's kind of weird, but definitely hits a wall in a regular camp, and so it's exciting to be close to games and see how the team's coming together.
I know we talk about with pitchers being able to ramp up with a shortened camp. For you as a hitter, are there any challenges that you have to deal with from a preparation standpoint?
You just got to go, I like having a routine in a long camp and being able to sit on things and not swing and just take my time, but, we just got to go and get ready.
What's it like to be a part of this lineup with some of the guys you're hitting behind and hitting in front of with some of the changes that were made?
It's exciting. We're going to be a dynamic offense. We're going to play good defense. We're going to pitch pretty well, and we're going to compete a whole lot differently than we did last year. So seeing the change and seeing things head in the right direction as a whole is really cool.
You had a left-handed hitter hitting around you last year in Joey for a lot of the year. Now you're going to have another left-handed hitter in Corey. Are you able to learn anything being that you're both lefties with the way pitchers maybe attack you, or two different players, two different approaches type of thing?
He's going to do what's going to make him really good, and I'm going to try and take in everything that he does and see how it'll help me play better and help the team win more. So, did the same thing with Joey, and he's kind of in his own category just because he hits it, 7 miles, but that's just the way it goes, and both of them are going to be great teammates and, learn from each other.
What's the energy been like in camp? It seems like one of the themes is that there's just a lot more excitement, a lot more of a positive vibe. Have you fed off of that and picked up on that?
Yeah, I think vibes are up as a whole, just because it's starting to look a whole lot more regular. Knowing that we're going to have a packed stadium on opening day in Toronto and then opening day at home, things are returning to pretty normal. So everybody's just really excited.
And then, one of the things Woody talked about, he was really complimentary of the work you've put in defensively. What are some of the things that you've been working on, and how do you feel about how things are going on that side of the ball?
Sure. Having guys like that on the infield, teammates like that are going to push every asset of your game to the highest level, it's exciting because, there's a little more freedom to kind of get out and explore what makes them good and what I can use to help me play better. And, having guys like that are just going to elevate my game.
All right, the last one, I think yesterday your first hit, broken bat maybe, I'm not sure. Spring training hits in exchange for broken bats. Is that a fair trade, or how do we feel about that?
Overrated. Got to pump the brakes and save them all.
Thanks.
Yeah.
determined to ask you, how did it feel, Taylor?
Felt not bad. Physically felt good, just hot, honestly. Yeah, other than that, legs felt good, arm felt really good. Missed my spots a little bit, but other than that, I mean, I was okay with the weak contact.
What was there anything in particular you were working on today?
Not really. I mean, more so just continue to throw my cutter. I think it got good results. I got weak contact, so I was fine with that. And it kind of kept the guys from leaning out over the plate on my sinker and fastball and stuff. So definitely did help out a lot.
Do you have any idea how many cutters you threw?
Probably about 8 to 10. 8 to 10.
Did you get any outs with it?
I did. Weak contact. I did give up. I think when we shifted, I think that hit that was over there was a cutter. I think it was. But other than that, yeah.
The one pitch I didn't hear you mention was your slider. We talked to Brendan Segura today about you bringing in a new slider last year that you are more comfortable with now. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
No, it's just the same one from last year. I just took the old slider and made it into a cutter, and then the new one's a lot bigger, a little bit more sweep on it. And I threw it a good amount today for strikes and for chase, but obviously they didn't chase it. But yeah, no, it's been progressing well. It was one thing I really took into the offseason, just trying to work on.
So your old slider from last year, like early last year, you turned into a cutter, or the one you were using late last year?
Both.
Both.
So the one I was using early last year was the cutter, basically, and I could manipulate it. And so the new slider.
Bless you.
Sorry. The new slider is a lot. It was the one I used towards like halfway through the year, towards the end. Yeah.
And you said that one's more of a sweeping one?
Yeah. I'm starting to get the feel for that one. That one I was like throwing last year, probably like low 80s, and I kind of got a lot more comfortable with it. Now I'm throwing like 85, 86, so it's gotten a lot better.
Okay.
I was wondering that first base hit that kicked off your glove. Was it just
Embarrassing? Yeah. It was, because the ball like hung up there for a while, and I kind of just like hesitated a little bit. And I kind of, I didn't know if Marcus was playing deep or not, but I was kind of like, I thought it was hit a little harder, but it hung up there forever. And so I kind of hesitated, and I was like, yeah, I should just let that drop.
3 of the 5 hits you allowed today that was one of them. Of course, you had the shift, and then you had the one that just grazed the line. Since it is spring training, does it feel a little bit better knowing that those kind of unlucky bounces are happening now and not a month from now?
Yeah, I need those to happen now. I don't need those to happen during the season. But yeah, other than that, like, I was fine with it. I mean, my biggest thing is if I'm not striking guys out, I want weak contact and try to put the ball in play. But yeah, I mean, hits like that I'm fine with it. And then like the last one where he hit it down the line, I kind of was trying to come up, and I left it up, and he kind of got enough of it. So it could have been a different ball game. Probably could have punched him out.
Okay, I'm confused because I thought the idea last year with the new slider was to create more tilt.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what you've done. The
Right.
new slider is more tilted.
Right. Yeah.
And the cutter now is more sweepy.
Yes.
Sweepy
Cutter.
and
Yeah. The
tilted.
cutter's a little bit. I wouldn't say more sweepy, but I guess the big slider or the other slider that I'm using is more sweepy, and the cutter is more just like a smaller slider, but it's more like registers as a cutter. Doesn't have that much movement.
But when you say sweep, you're talking about vertical movement also, not just horizontal.
Actually, with the new one, yeah, I don't want any vertical movement on it.
Okay.
You don't.
Yeah, I want more horizontal.
Okay.
I guess.
How would you describe the relative overall effectiveness of the slider as a pitch for the Texas Rangers in 2020?
I knew you were going to ask that, just because I hear the pitching coaches talking about it. How would I say the slider is?
How was it last year?
I don't know. I guess you can look at the numbers. For certain guys, they made adjustments and they made significant improvements, I guess. I think the pitch itself is pretty unique to the individual. Some guys' sliders, and the slider has actually changed a lot over the years. Some guys, throw a cutter, it's more of a slur, and we got all kinds of different, I won't say some of the names we use for them, but a little mix of cutter, slider, curveball, somewhere in between. And some guys have big shapes to it. Some guys have small shapes, and the effectiveness of the pitch comes a lot off of the fastball. So if you tunnel it and you throw it off of the same angle, the same approach, out of the hand, if it actually goes along well with the fastball, then it's a really effective pitch. Some guys have like a ton of movement to it, but it's not that effective because it pops out of the hand, so the hitter sees it right away. The Kershaw type slider, or even the Greg Holland slider, whose spin is like one of the lowest slider spins in all of baseball, but it's super effective because it just comes literally out of the same spot and just goes straight down. So it's a unique pitch to individuals, but I think the way, what you're asking me is, Doug and Sags, and especially Sags, have a unique ability to understand the physics of the pitch and how that relates to how guys pronate and able to use how their hand actually, how their wrist actually is able to create spin. And you can get pretty scientific, but I don't think we need to get that in depth. But I think Sags has a unique ability to kind of understand the person, how they spin the ball currently, and how they can actually maximize their ability to use that pitch more often and create more effectiveness in the pitch.
He's like a slider scientist.
He's just a pitch scientist. I think the slider, maybe he's getting a little more credit just because of some of the success our guys have had with that pitch. But I think the way he understands, fastball movement, two-seam movement, even curveball spin or changeup spin. I mean, it's, there's a lot of guys in the last couple of years that have actually really improved their changeup just by the grip and understanding how the air hits the ball to make it go down, if that's what we're trying to create. Some guys actually have four-seam changeup spin, and it's actually effective because it fools the hitter. Too much movement sometimes is actually against you because the hitter sees it right away. It just sees the ball moving and they just check it off. So, like I said, it depends on the counter pitch to it. Pitch in a vacuum is effective on a analytics chart, but it's how it actually works with that other pitch that creates the deception in the hitter's mind.
All right, so from layman's terms, in layman's terms.
I was trying to do it in layman's terms, apparently not.
In layman's terms, so back up, right? So Dane yesterday talked about his new grip,
Yep.
which is the same grip as John, and John's gave all this credit to Sags.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like Dane's slider functioned more as kind of a get-me-over pitch last year.
The slider?
Yeah.
His good one wasn't. I think that's more of the curveball. Like the curveball was more of just he can only use it really in 0-0 counts or against hitters that are weak against it, or that he can steal a strike to get them so they don't have to see any other of his pitches, and he's 0-1. Other than that, it was more like, we don't want you to use that pitch in a leverage count against a hitter who, to finish off a hitter, we're not even going to mess with that. We're going to stick with your strength. So his slider should be his strength, along with his sinker. And one thing we've asked him to use more is his changeup, even to right-handed hitters. And that was yesterday. He didn't use any to right-handed hitters, and it was a little frustrating because it was something we talked about.
I've got to digest some of that.
Okay.
I was wondering, from a catching standpoint, Jonah Hyman, Jose Trevino, what have you seen from the both of them in a short sample size?
It's a small sample, so it's hard to, obviously offensively, I think both are working hard to try to, they came into camp ready, and I think that both guys, had dug in a ton on the pitching side, in the game calling, the receiving. Obviously, the catching side has been really good. I think Jonah, came in with a pretty significantly, like, I'm going to take this attitude. He's been awesome, as Trevino has as well. So I'm not saying he's been better in that regard, but I just think both have really tried to come into camp and say, I'm going to take the job. And when it comes to offensively, it's too small to tell, because some guys, just because they get off to a good start doesn't mean that that's going to carry them through. So I like what I'm seeing from both guys. It's going to be a tough, if one guy doesn't make it, it's going to be a tough conversation. But we're lucky to have both those guys obviously in the mix.
So how do you make that distinction? Do you use any last year's stock into consideration?
Yes, and honestly, how it matches up with our team. With Mitch, it's Mitch is going to get the bulk of the playing time as long as he's healthy. But who complements him well, who can have a quality of ABs, not in an everyday role, and not that one guy last year actually played every day, because I think they kind of had spurts where one played more than the other, but it was kind of a back and forth thing, and it was like earned. So I want to make sure that obviously it stays true, but we have to make a decision as an organization to say, okay, who's going to give us the best option moving forward. It's not going to be easy because I think you can make an argument for both.
So does that put Jonah maybe at a tiny bit advantage because he is a switch hitting catcher?
It helps. I mean, there's no question it helps just from the right left. So it's, if there's a matchup, tough lefty, I can get one of the left-handed hitters out of the lineup, maybe put Mitch in the DH. I can shuffle some things around. So maybe. And then if it's a right-handed pitcher, obviously with Trevino being right-handed, it puts him at a little disadvantage. And Jonah can obviously switch around, but I'm not going to say right now. I think it's too early.
So we're less than 2 weeks away. Have you, and you now have a better idea that you have the 28-man roster. And I know we asked you this a couple days ago, but I just want to go back. Do you feel like you're pretty much wedded to the idea of 10 relievers?
Yeah, whatever, 15 pitchers, yes. I think so. I think we've definitely thought about ways to go 14 and 14, but I think we keep coming back to the idea that 15 probably makes sense. Just gives us, like I said, more options, more strategy involved. We can use guys, we can keep guys healthier. We're not going to burn anybody out. And the uncertainty on the starting pitching side of how that first 2 times kind of go through the rotation. I hope it goes well. I hope each guy, does fine. But if we have, either somebody has a high pitch count in short inning or somebody gets hit and we have to take them out of the game, it's going to put us in a little bit of a bind if we have 14. So just having that extra arm, and it'll be a good arm. It's not going to be not pitch arm. We're actually going to use them.
And I don't even, like this year, I don't even know if it matters, right? But you've got 2 guys who have significant track records with innings in Gray and Perez. Mm-hmm. And you'll have 3 guys that don't have much of a track record. Everybody's going to be somewhat limited to start the year. So does it matter, like, what order you use those guys in? Because, I would think with the younger guys, you'd expect them to go shorter. You can't. You run into an issue where you're like burning out your bullpen on consecutive days.
That's and listen, we'll figure that out. I think we actually might play into some strategy as well. Facing Toronto, they're a pretty right-handed heavy lineup. So if there's some strategy there to say, hey, we don't want to expose our lefty, we could bump a guy down to the 4, but we're considering obviously all options right now. The experience part. That's going to be more on like what we're seeing now and how we see that play out. If it's Taylor or Dane, those guys, or whoever our 5th starter is, it's probably going to be the 5th starter. I don't see the 5th starter being bumped to 3, but it more comes down to like where do Taylor and Martin Perez kind of fall in, especially with the right-handed heavy lineup in Toronto, a good one too.
But if you go through right-handers in Toronto, you're probably going 2 lefties against Colorado. That doesn't bother you.
Yeah, I mean it's not as deep of a lineup in Colorado. I mean they still got some pretty good hitters over there. But like I said, if we save the 2, one of the lefties is probably going to have to pitch in Toronto. It's hard to. That would mean our 5 would have to maybe pitch 3, and I don't think we're going to do that. So just figure out which one it is.
When we were talking about Josh Smith and Davis Wenzel kind of being versatile in the infield, I think we all kind of forgot Ezekiel Duran was coming in too, and he's also in middle infielder. Where does he fit in, just in terms of defensively? Can he? I know he played a bit of third in the fall league. I don't know. Can he play outfield as well, or is he kind of?
I'm sure he could play outfield. I know Wenzel and Smith. We've actually seen them out there, like not in the game yet, but like just in shagging, and they look pretty good out there. They look pretty comfortable. But I think Duran. I think they all 3 of those guys, second, short, third, like. I'm still trying to, we're still trying to kind of sort through. We're still getting to know some of these guys. Right. Obviously, Wenzel, we know more, but he hasn't played. He's been with us, but he hasn't played in games very much. Smith, Duran, we've had for a short amount of time. Still getting a chance to kind of get to see their actions and what we think. We had scouts tell us, hey, we think this guy can do this, whatever. But once we get our own eyes on him, it's then we'll kind of make a judgment on where their best position is. But I mean, I feel pretty comfortable in any spot with all three of those guys. I've seen enough of Davis now to know that he can play short. He may not be as rangy as Smith and maybe even Duran, but you know, he's got all the attributes of just being a good infielder, middle infielder, or third baseman.
I know both Smith and Wenzel have played short and third. Will they play any outfield when they get to Round Rock?
Smith maybe. I think we definitely had plans to kind of get Smith in the center maybe at some point. So how we fit that in, you know, obviously with whoever we have down, and you know, wherever he goes, whether that's AAA or AA, it's more suited to kind of make sure he's ready to take on that role if need be. If he comes up to the big leagues, it's going to be probably in a, you know, more versatile role if we need that. Now, if he's killing it and it's more of an everyday role, probably on the infield. I don't see him like taking over an everyday center field role, but like if he comes up and we need him to provide some versatility, obviously center field would be nice to have. So just kind of getting him out there to see it a little bit. I don't think Davis, probably he's more like corner outfielder, but he looks good when he's power stacking out there in center. So I tell him he can. I'm guessing he'll tell you, you know, he can. So it's just nice to have the versatility, especially on the infield. I can put any of those guys at first as well.
Right.
They might not be the biggest targets, but they can get it done.
Can Brad Miller still play shortstop in a pinch?
I think so. I mean, I coached him as a shortstop. He was like my first big league shortstop that I coached. So I think so. I mean, it's been a while since he's kind of been over there. I think in a pinch, it would be tough to ask, especially if he's not getting a ton of reps there, to put a guy who hasn't played there very much, even though he did play in the past. I would feel comfortable in, like I said, in a pinch, maybe a game or at most 2 or 3.
What do you remember about the Zoom that you were on with Gray, that Matheson, Sags were on with him?
Oh, before we signed him?
Yeah.
I just remember him being very intrigued by the information. That kind of stood out. He was very wide-eyed, like wanting to learn, wanting to understand. He was very, very open, transparent about his time in Colorado and the difficulties he had. He didn't make excuses about it, just said, this is what I had to deal with, this is how I dealt with it. You know, not knowing what my ball was going to do, I had to figure that out quickly. And you know, I witnessed it just from third base coach. You know, I got to see this guy pitch against a lot in LA, and you know, it was an interesting guy to watch, because it was like the guy dominated us sometimes, and sometimes we got him. And you know, just hearing his take on it, and then hearing the hitters. You know, I know talking to David Dahl from the year before, just what hitters have had to go through there. And then obviously from a pitching standpoint, really, really difficult place to pitch. But it was cool to hear him just be like, hey, I never backed down. I tried, you know, I figured the ways to get guys out in Colorado. It was frustrating at times because there was no consistency. You know, I'd throw a bullpen 2 days before I pitched, and it was at home, and then I would go on the road, and that bullpen meant nothing to my start because it was in a different place. So he was really, really fascinated by, you know, Doug and Sags and just what they could offer him. We gave him a great presentation, and he was all in. You could see his eyes light up, like, oh my gosh, like just what he feels like he's capable of. You know, he feels obviously relieved to maybe have some more consistency.
So